Monarch points need no introduction. You spend them on everything from new technologies and ideas to coring land and integrating subjects. These things matter, but what happens to an AI when they have access to an unlimited amount? See, as a player, knowing I have an infinite amount of monarch points means that monarchs, or rulers of your country, serve no purpose outside of their traits. And unless I'm trying to get a level 3 advisor event, promoting past level 1 advisors also becomes a waste. I can dev my land to obscene levels, and in fact not only will I make a bank from every province being devved to the moon, I can also exploit the tax, production and manpower of my provinces to keep my sailors, soldiers and cash reserves stocked up. But that is the kind of play a person makes with outside context of how to behave in an environment with infinite monarch points. What about the AI behavior given the same conditions? And what does the world look like if you give just one nation infinite monarch points as opposed to all of them? Is that enough for the one AI to do a world conquest, for example? Today I will begin with first considering every AI with infinite monarch points and later look at the one AI example. But before we do that, just a quick pit stop to say that a like would be appreciated and a subscription would be amazing. Look around the world, I have observed that Austria, despite my best effort, continues to have more force limit than I have subscribers. An unacceptable state of affairs, and hence one that I would like to resolve. So if you haven't already subscribed, well, your support will be appreciated. Nevertheless, let us now return to the topic at hand. How does the AI deal with infinite monarch points? So here we are in EU4, and the way I've decided to go about this is to give every single nation a triggered modifier which just gives them an quote-unquote infinite amount of monarch points each month. This is going to let you have an effective infinite amount of monarch points while preserving the actual cap on monarch points they would have, so every single country doesn't immediately take Tech 32 and fill out all their ideas again instantly. I understand this is not technically an infinite amount of monarch points as you can't go above the cap of monarch points, and in fact I actually tried to remove the caps, but I found that this very quickly led to a lot of crashes. So I think the game was just not expecting to have 2 million monarch points and some stack overflow issues started occurring and things. As such, for the purpose of actually having the video today, we're going to have an infinite amount of monarch points generated each month, but we're not going to have an infinite amount of monarch point storage. That's still going to be remaining quote-unquote vanilla. So let's pop into the game and see what that looks like. So here we are in England, a nation I famously never play. And in our country modifiers, we have something called free_mana. That's because this has not been localized, as this is just a demonstration mod. I'm not going to be publishing this mod, so therefore no need to bother with things like localization and making things pretty. But indeed, we basically have an infinite amount of monarch points coming in each month, regardless of any national focuses or whatever the AI is going to do to have less monarch points coming in, right? This is going to be filling up the cap regardless of what you're doing, even if you never take any institutions and somehow end up with a cap in the 10,000 range. Not going to happen, basically, but yeah. This is going to fill up your cap, that's the point. And this was my initial plan, and it worked for the first day. So what's the issue with this setup? Introducing Native American tribes. Now some of you may be pointing out, Mr. Lemon Cake, there isn't Native American tribes, that's Native Australian tribes, they're not Native American tribes. To which I say, well, EU4 has coded the Native Australian tribes as Native Americans. Rather literally, their federations have American Federation, Convention of Federation, government reforms and everything. To this day, natives in Native Australia can pass Pax Americana. But bullying about weird localization aside, one of the things that these Native Americans in Australia have access to is, of course, migration. And the way this works is that you can spend some of your mill points to migrate around. There's no cooldown on it, and it just costs a couple mill points. Here's the issue. Well, you can just migrate, right? As in, I can just keep going within the same day. Now, thankfully, the AI only attempts to migrate once each day, but if you have an infinite amount of monarch points, well, actually we do run up here because it's not that infinite. I think it's best to leave it to an observation. What I mean to say is, let us go to speed 5. I've now migrated these chaps around, and I'll pause. And as you can see, they're going to start migrating every single goddamn day. Yep, the answer to what the AI does with infinite monarch points is that every single Native American is going to start migrating every single day because they can. Apart from being a bit trippy on the timeline, this isn't inherently a bad thing. This doesn't crash the game. The issue, of course, is that while the Europeans are trying to do things like 100 Years' War and the fall of Rome and Byzantium, the absolute gigachads over in North America are all going on a trip, all the way around Canada and Central America. Yep, thank you. And the problem with all of this movement is, again, outside of being very trippy, is this is very, very lag intensive. As you can see, this is speed 5, this is not going particularly fast. And this isn't just reserved down to North America as well. Even the South American tribes are having a great time moving and schmoving around. If anything, they're a bit more active. So that's something. I'm just not saying it's a good thing. This performance hit is actually so bad that I let the game run for like an hour, and I came back and it was 1460. Which naturally means that if I do actually want to finish this video and get some actual observations done, realistically we're gonna have to, how do I put it this politely, remove the Native Americans' ability to be annoying. As such, we're going to have to modify the game a little bit more before we can actually begin this quote-unquote experiment. So here we are, we've loaded back into England, and if we look around, as you can see, all the monarch points and our monthly monarch points are all fine. However, heading on over to our previous Australian example, as you can see, they're unable to migrate here, because I've made it require you to spend 1 million of each monarch point to migrate to an area. This should be again impossible for them to ever save, meaning that they will never be able to migrate. Unfortunately, there is one quote-unquote exception to this rule, the tribes that actually make monarch points by migrating. So I've decided that I can't really ever prevent that, but what I can do is basically limit it to 1 migration. These gentlemen will be able to migrate once, and once they've done that, their cooldown has been put to, well, 20,000 years basically, so they're never going to be able to migrate again, and therefore not hurt our performance. As such, this massive nerf to the Chukchi and their ability to migrate shouldn't impact the world too much, at least I can only hope, but nevertheless I still want to clarify that this is a thing I've done, just so I could actually, record this video. Nevertheless, this is the world we all know and love on the 11th of November 1444, and having done some tests previously, I'm going to very quickly switch into the tech map mode and let you enjoy the sights. Speed 3, and well, it's quite a field as the AI starts taking technologies and catching up, and all the African nations suddenly realize, oh, there's technologies, and then they're behind again. In essence, they're going to take technologies as best as they can before they actually have to spend more on their tech than they can store, quote-unquote, if that makes sense. You do see some unlikely candidates leading the charge when it comes to the technologies. What is this? Ladakh being the current technological marvel until the next monthly and a bunch of people catch up. Then there we go, Moldova is currently in charge with nations like Mazan and the Mamluks out in the green, and everyone in Madagascar, the true technological heaven. But yep, the early months pass without too much effort. As we do start to approach Advent Tech 5 though, we're going to see that some nations are able to immediately grab ideas. And thankfully, otherwise this would have been rather sad, the AI is capable, once they've grabbed ideas, in this case France here, to actually start filling them out. Now, they are a bit finicky with how they fill them out. As you can see, they can grab the next idea here. And they finally do. And come on, you can grab another one. Are they going to do that before the month tick? Probably not. But even if they're super inefficient about it, as you can see here, they still eventually end up filling these ideas out, which is good to see. But indeed, this is 1445. Not much has happened here at the moment, but very few mods are going to be doing such drastic changes that things will actually happen in 1 year. So, let's let this run for a bit and come back in 1450. And we're back on the 11th of November 1450, so we had 5 years to get the world going. The technology map mode remains being a bit weird. Most nations are sitting at 555, with a couple nations grabbing the 665, but very ahead of time. I think there's certainly some weights for rulers, perhaps, if I were to wager a guess. For example, no, not Silver Time. I was thinking maybe scholars are more keen to take technology super ahead of time. Or I guess they must have had some tech cost reductions, because as you can see here, the Ottomans still cannot actually take Tech 6, despite having access to it. So how are nations like Fado able to take the next tech? Do they have some tech cost reduction? I'm assuming so. It's some weird... I never thought Fado would be able to take technology here. I am aware of why. The Fado does not have access to Renaissance, which actually does increase tech cost, but it also increases the max amount of monarch points they can store, which in this case lets them actually take the tech ahead of time. That's an interesting approach to this. And by approach, I mean maybe you don't actually want to embrace institutions so you can take techs more aggressively. Nevertheless, it's 1450 and countries like Portugal have already completed exploration. And look at them, they're out here colonizing. Good for them. Same for nations like Castile. Otherwise, the world's pretty normal. England did take this opportunity to give up Maine back to France, so that's interesting. And Burgundy, for whatever reason, is already 1 death away from a personal union, so that's... well, honestly, a case of RNG. I don't think technology and Infinite Monarch Points are responsible for that. Lastly, it's 1450, so don't expect too much development. But are we able to notice any changes to development already? And, I mean, it's looking a bit more green. If we take a look at these provinces, yep, they're definitely deving already. Which, yep, 11 dev clicks here, 12 dev clicks here. That's actually a lot more than I expected. That's a lot more dev clicks, for example, in Castile than I ever expected. Sevilla's already at 19 dev, which, oh, only 3 dev clicks. Surprisingly, not deving the gold mine. Really thought they would dev the gold mine more, for example. But the capital's been deved 11 times. Madrid's been devved 9 times. Valladolid's been devved 12 times. So yeah, we're already seeing a lot more development. Paris, for one, is also sitting at 9 development. So at the moment, the AI is seemingly focusing on their core lands, as you can see here. So yeah, 6 dev clicks on Namors, 8 dev clicks on Charters. So we're already seeing a lot more dev clicks come out. 11 dev clicks on Brittany. And I still hate how this D in the vanilla setup of this country very slightly leaves their country. That's a bit annoying to me, but nevertheless. That's not what we're here for, complaining. And I mean, I would say Germany and Italy looks pretty devved, but that's just vanilla. Also, despite having Tech 5 in the same regard that the Ottomans do, I don't think that's enough to save Byzantium here. I think they're also very much getting demolished here. But maybe Infinite Monarch Points is just what the Mamluks needed to resist the Ottomans. They've expanded quite aggressively, already bordering the Ottomans. However, I do have to say, how are they already out of manpower? It's 1450. You haven't fought the Ottomans or done anything apart from fight Ramazan for a little bit. How have you managed that? Regardless, one area I'm very curious towards is to see how Ming deals with high technology hordes, because while all of these monarch points are probably really good to Ming because they'll be able to dev institutions and dev their own land, so they'll be able to dev away any devastation that's hurting their mandate, the hordes that are going to be invading the Ming are not going to be technologically behind. And in the case of Fortune here, they might actually be technologically ahead, diplomatically, which is not what they want to be ahead in. Fortune, please take no tech 6 and just win. That said though, I'm rather curious. Does Infinite Monarch Points favour Ming more than it favours the hordes? I guess we'll find out. So I'll catch you in the 1500s. And we're back in the 1500s now, on the 1st of January 1500 to be specific. There's been a lot less consolidation. Look, immediately you can see that Granada's managed to survive, as have a bunch of small Italians and a lot of Germans. But simply giving everyone Infinite Monarch Points has meant that a lot of the smaller nations have been able to keep up with the bigger nations. One of those who've been able to do this is with the dev button. I'm actually very, very pleasantly surprised with how much the AI has been deving, because this is a lot of development. This is like a late game France development for AI, already present in the 1500s. If you just look through this land, we're looking at what, 20 dev clicks here, 20 dev clicks here, Maine's got 15 dev clicks, and even the lesser dev woods provinces are already looking at 9 dev clicks. The red highlights, normally the 4 dev development provinces, are already getting 5 dev clicks here, so rather impressive. And it's not just France, that's most of the eyes as well. Looking at Hungary, that's been enjoying a lot of dev clicks in their land. Look at that, 22 dev clicks here, 25 in Prague, very, very well on that front. One of the things I also found interesting this campaign, Bohemia decided to go Hussite, so they've been slowly converting themselves and now also Poland to the Hussite faith. So I was thinking, oh, this has probably really hurt Poland. However, Poland has done really, really well for themselves. If we look into Poland here, well, they are in a golden age. They've got a pretty reasonable income, especially for an AI in 1567 is nothing to be scoffed at. But more importantly, they're sitting at over 800 development, and their subject of Lithuania is sitting with 105 troops, who is fully loyal because of the personal union, and they themselves are sitting with 110 force limit, which is very impressive with 99 troops in the field. The Ottomans, meanwhile, were of course able to gobble up at least some of their initial neighbours, and by that I mean, I guess they've, consolidated Greece, and that's about it, really. Yeah, rather disappointing act from them, to be honest. But even here, with not too much land, I mean, they're finally killing AQ, they're sitting at 88k troops, so they're actually weaker than Poland, at least pure troop count-wise. Everyone is sitting around Tech 9 at this point, but indeed, basically nations with more land to dev, even if it is pretty bad dev here, like this desert here. I mean, Tunis actually having an incredible game, I've just realized. That is a lot of very highly dev land inside Tunis proper. They've been doing very well for themselves. Good job, Tunis. 31 dev on this coastal desert, that's insane. 35 in this dry land. Good job, Tunis. But even Morocco has achieved late game levels of dev with 31 on their entire coastline here. Like, 39 is yellow. I'm not sure why this dry land is 35 and the gold's been neglected. And I say neglected, it's 30 dev clicks. Well, not clicks, 20 dev clicks on 10 dev highland. It's incredible. So that's Europe, but I think what's more remarkable is nations like Muscovy, because of course Muscovy's also had access to all of the dev clicks everywhere. And when you're starting to dev even random forests 26 times, well, they start to grow in power even more than they normally do. Taking a look at Muscovy here, well, ideas filled out, but that's every AI ever, but we're looking at 1,366 development, and frankly, not even that large of a Muscovy. They haven't taken that much land, given what they normally go for, but it's just all been developed so much. And even nations like the Great Horde here have been deving so aggressively that it's now 4 wars to eat the Great Horde. The whole world, in terms of expansion, has been really slowing down, because of just how many metropolises have risen up from the ground. And I guess I have to say I'm very impressed with the scaling. And while Japan is slowly but surely coming around to their unification, what I think is the most remarkable is Ming's early survival. They actually managed to lose a province over here to Oirat, and Oirat has done some Oirati-based things, don't get me wrong. Oirat running around with 144,000 troops is very scary. But Ming, despite being in an unguarded nomadic frontier, with no mandate, is still deving to the moon, with almost 2,000 development they've gained without any real expansion, if anything, territorial loss. And that's because they've been deving places like Nanjing, as you can see here with 43 development and 10 dev clicks, and even inland farms here, 19 dev clicks on this province, 25 dev clicks here, 21 dev clicks on this Gem Hill, incredible. But I think you've gotten the point about dev clicks. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that all the other nations, including the ones in Africa, have been keeping up on technologies, which means nations like the Congo are able to get their colonization going quite early. It has also meant that Mutapa seems to be winning the 1v1 against Kilwas, and that's nice to see and rather unusual, but indeed the Congo has begun their colonization efforts, expanding rather rapidly and indeed keeping up with technology yet again. Not to say, of course, that the Congo hasn't been deving, with 35 dev clicks in this grassland copper province, 32 dev clicks here, and an incredible 50 dev capital with 35 dev clicks in their capital. The Congo is certainly a force to be reckoned with, but the colonizers are not to be disregarded. Going into Portugal here, we can see a pretty unremarkable 432 development, which is not bad, don't get me wrong, but not as insane as something we've seen before. But of course, with exploration expansion finished this early and be used for so long, they've been going at it, especially in the New World with Portuguese Brazil already in a rather substantial size, and the Caribbean already been at 322 development. A 22 dev-clicked capital for them is quite impressive too. The Castilian colonies though are going above and beyond, with colonies in Canada, colonies in America, and even a bit of an incursion into Texas, and I'm guessing Mexico eventually. Here's a religious map mode for those interested. And while the Aztecs indeed are able to maintain technological prowess, indeed they're actually ahead of time in Aban and Dip compared to everyone else, I don't think they've been doing that well. They haven't exactly united the area or progressed too far in their missions. Although they have, again, made some progress, and I have to conceive they have at least done literally all of their reforms, so hence they are ready to reform. I'm surprised they're not doing that, to be honest. I was going to say they haven't done that well because they haven't reformed their religion. I've now realized they have been able to reform their religion, they're just not doing it. Either way, the Native Americans haven't been held too far back without their lack of migration. As you can see, they've formed quite large federations now, and are going ahead to colonize and expand. In this case here, completing espionage, indigenous, and economic ideas already. Remarkably enough, being behind institutions is actually an advantage, as you're able to grab important technologies like Admin Tech here a bit earlier than people that actually have institutions due to the extra Monarch Point cap, meaning that these guys are able to fill out an entire idea group and have an extra idea group going for a bit longer than the Europeans, for example. Certainly a non-trivial bonus. Looking at great powers here, this great powers list is very heavily weighted towards bigger nations who are able to just have more provinces to dev to the moon. And I want to remind you, this isn't some kind of late game save, this is the 1500s already. So you know what? I commend it. The AI is actually able to spend the Monarch points a lot more effectively than I expected them to be able to. Although AI being AI, they are still running +3 advisors. I guess we can give them again the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're just going to try and pop the events. Nevertheless, this is the state of the world in the 1500s. So let's come back into the 1550s and see what's changed. And we're back on the 1st of January of 1550. This is the state of Europe. And I think finally, at least a little bit of expansion is starting to happen. Namely, Milan is starting to consolidate northern Italy. Germany looks a bit more consolidated, but honestly, you could tell me this is a vanilla 1500s image and I'd believe you. And finally, the Ottomans are slowly starting to expand a bit further into Baghdad, and the Mamluks are putting up a bit of a fight. And by that I mean they've snaked into the monument they didn't build. Very Mamluk-based expansion. Love it. Granada continues to survive with a castle rampart on their capital, so I guess I can see how they're still around. But given that Tunis is fielding a really impressive 87,000 troops, and is, of course, allied to Granada, that's probably the other reason. This has, of course, stopped Castile from pursuing the union with Aragon, but it's not that they're significantly weaker. With 163,000 troops in the field, this is incredible. And indeed, they have almost 1,000 development just within their land here, as well as their colonial expansions. Speaking of colonial expansions, they are continuing to do their best to expand into the native lands. But given that everyone has access to modern military technologies, well, in some cases, the poor Castilians are actually behind here, as they have Tech 13 and 12, compared to some of these natives having Tech 15. That's just how much of a difference not having institutions makes for your cap. France has also grabbed a couple extra provinces, but they've also done a lot more dev clicks, as they have 1,000 developments all within here. We actually consider the development map mode. It looks pretty normal, but that's until you start clicking through and you realize that these yellow provinces, in fact almost orange provinces, are 26 development. And Paris is sitting at 42, and Nemours is at 41, with 26 dev click on average here. This is ridiculous for AI especially. Poland, with their 133,000 troops in the field, compared with the Lithuanian PU of 165,000, is finally putting a stop, quote-unquote, to the Teutons. Although the religious situation in Poland has somehow gotten even worse, because while Bohemia has abandoned the Hussite faith and gone Protestant, Poland picked up that mantle and also went Hussite, as has Lithuania. So you have Lithuanian, Polish, Hussitism. Now, see, as Poland, sometimes you want to go Orthodox because you have so much Orthodox land, or you stick with Catholicism. But I guess in this case, the Polish Hussite build was the build they were going for. Protestant Reformation is in full swing, and Russia has formed and begun Siberian frontiering. The hordes have survived, mainly due to their technological prowess gained from Infinite Monarch Points. However, this has not exactly held Russia back, as Russia is almost catching up to China in development. With that said, though, the Chinese, well, Oirat has not been kind on them. Oirat continuing to exist has basically meant that they have not had mandate for this game. However, this has not stopped the Chinese from deving through to the moon. If you look at their land, it's mostly yellow, but this mostly yellow comes down to 31 development. Meaning that sure, you see provinces here like Beijing with 18 dev clicks that are 37 development, but the average Chinese province is sitting at 30 development, which is incredible. Ashikaga has also almost finished uniting Japan, as they'd begun annexation of their final subject, although its lack of loyalty is being an issue. Which makes sense, Hosokawa here has almost 400 development, which is absolutely insane, giving them plus 98 lib desire from development, which means we might not actually see a Japan form. The Portuguese colonizers have also reached Australia, so that's something. But in terms of impressive colonization, I also have to say that the Congo and Mutapa have both been doing incredibly well with their expansion and colonization of the Africa area. They're really trying to do their best as the defenders and I guess taking up the mantle of the native African powers. And even though the capital of the Congo has quote-unquote fallen to Catholicism, they've remained strong in their fetishist convictions. Also, very Coptic Ethiopia. Love it. The nation I really didn't expect, though, to be so proficient in development has been Tunis. Not only have, again, they've driven their capital to 40 development with 26 dev clicks, or even the Kef fort to 31 dev clicks on 36 development, even the deserts here have been dev to 31, which is, again, incredible. Or 32 in this desert here. You look at this desert, you think, oh, it's red, it must be 3 development. No, 20 with 17 dev clicks. Religious quantity espionage Tunis with 87 troops in the field. And frankly, not much expansion in the process. Very impressive. But no, the religious map mode is incredibly cursed, and I would like to attribute that to max monarch points, but I think that's a bit disingenuous. Scotland has also somehow managed to survive, and I guess the answer to how they managed to survive is because all of their land is dev to at least 30 to 45. This rather small Scotland here, by the looks of it, actually is 3 wars to take. And as much as England desires to take Lothian at 41 development with 25 dev clicks, that's going to be quite the challenge for them. These are the great powers. A rather weird collection, but I guess almost expected, and Oirat having so much land after annexing Mongolia makes sense. But Hungary is also an unexpected entry. And I think my picture of that is that Hungary tends to struggle, if they're not a player, to dev click as efficiently as their land allows them to. But the land in Hungary itself is actually very good for dev clicking. So now that the AI has access to Infinite Monarch Points, they've actually devved a lot. I also do like how the Ottomans have gone for the gold mine and not much else. India frankly looks pretty normal despite Delhi's interesting expansion options, but this isn't too unusual. Same with religious map mode. I've also found it fascinating that Russia has actually found gold in this province here as they were severing frontiering, and they took this opportunity to dev the manpower of the province twice. Then again though, with 163 income, I don't think Russia is in particular need of money. And looking at the 75 of tax income, I think they've been deving a lot of tax. They've also gone for peasant freedom, and I've just realized that yeah, the AI has been doing an incredible amount of deving because there's nowhere in God's green earth that the AI is managing 100% crown land here. Poland's on 97 and also abolished the church? Fascinating. How did they manage that? Separating the clergy from the state. Fascinating. And also Majapahit's having a surprisingly good game here with their colonization and expansion. Good for them. This is the global religious map mode for those interested. But with that said, let's run 50 more years and see what happens. And we're back in the 1600s. Here is Europe. And honestly, not much has really changed. Austria's eaten a couple more provinces of Bohemia, as you can see here. And indeed, Poland was able to take 2 provinces in the Teutonic Empire, but it's unable to form the Commonwealth because the Teutons still exist. And the average province here is 43 to 46 to 51 to 45 development, meaning that what remains of the Teutons here is 3 wars to go. Again, the development by the AI has been incredible and far outscaling what I expected the AI to do. Regarding great powers, Russia has been unable to knock Ming down from their peg, and Portugal has now risen to be the 2nd greatest great power. The Ottomans have continued their expansions, and Georgia has finally fallen, a bit to the hordes and a bit to the Ottomans. But nevertheless, the Ottomans have been unable to go really fight or expand into the Mamluks. As the Mamluk 291,000 troops is now significantly ahead of the Ottoman 211,000. Now there are some wars going on. If we tab into Tunis here, we can see that the combined Castilian and Portuguese are actually invading the area. Meanwhile, the Tunisians themselves are setting up a defensive line to the back here, ready to fight. But with manpower pools of 161,000 and force limits in the 150s, this is like an MP death war level of troop counts. This is pretty insane. Like, this is late game EU4 MP kind of troops and setups that I expect to see, and seeing it from an AI is incredible. This kind of scaling is unheard of. 54 development in the Tunisian capital, 37 everywhere else, and even desert provinces with 40 development is again incredible. Unfortunately, this also means that basically no expansion ever happens. Granada has been finally defeated, and they've taken 2 provinces because that was 40 development. And now the rest of Granada remains with 45 development. Great Britain has finally formed in the 1600s as their expansion has led them to take over Lothian, 45 development, and take a bit more of Scotland, although Scotland still remains in the north, hiding away because this remnant bit of Scotland is 2 wars, or 1.5 wars. The Congo continue their expansion, although probably a bit more slowed down now as they've run out of areas to colonize, and Kitara has survived, although Zimbabwe has expanded and now formed, which is neat to see. It's not a tag you see every day, to be clear. Ethiopia continues to slowly but surely consolidate the area, and India, again, frankly looks pretty vanilla, although Mwa's survival is pretty rare, so that's good to see that Mwa's doing a thing. Portugal has taken over Australia, and despite Cusco's best effort, well, they're still around, but British Brazil, French La Plata, and Argentina are all coming in for the area. The Aztecs, though, have seen a bit more success against the Spanish, driving them out of Texas and into the central Mexican deserts. Good luck with that. And indeed, the Native Americans have driven the Floridians out of Florida, as the Coweta Federation now rules that land, and Florida has been relegated to the east coast of the US. Canada, though, is the Castilian crown jewel. Unfortunately, Orad was unable to capitalize on the Ming, which is a massive shame, meaning that despite the Ming's mandate, well, now sitting a respectable 4, and them not leaving unguarded nomadic frontier like ever, they've still managed to survive and thrive as they continue to develop. And with 3,245 development points, yeah, they're doing pretty well. Though Japan failed to form, as Ashikaga was never able to annex Hosokawa. The development map mode actually looks pretty much the same as last time. The average province is 30 development, as previously mentioned. There's only been a couple more dev clicks in the farmlands. For those curious, this is a religious map mode in the New World, and in the south of the New World. The European Reformation and religious map mode is, as always, a mess, but an extra beautiful mess due to Hussite Poland. But frankly, the world looks pretty normal, despite the changes made. Although the development counts are absolutely insane. As is the trade, because 140 ducats in the English Channel is almost MP levels of income. Same for seeing 84 ducats in Genoa, and 43 ducats Baltic Sea, in the 1600s again. To be clear, England can spawn global trade, we just didn't. The printing press spawned in Dalaskogen. Interesting that Sweden did not choose to turn Dalaskogen into a paper mine, that would have been rather funny. And Friuli was the birthplace of the Renaissance. But I'm going to be ending the every AI has access to infinite monarch points here, because I'll be honest, I think the expansion has slowed down significantly. At most, Poland can win a war and take 2 provinces, meaning that at this point we're not going to see that many map changes, and I don't think it's going to be too many developments either way. Yes, the war's been developed through the roof, but okay, every province is going to go from 35 to 40 dev. I don't think there's new interesting things to say, and given the absolute slogfest that wars look like at the moment, even if Castile is able to go take 2-3 provinces of war, they're going to take a while to actually achieve that. With that said, I do still remain impressed that the AI was actually able to develop as much as it did. I really assumed that it would just sit on those monarch points, and in fairness, a lot of the time it has done so. To be also clear, it is running stupid level advisors. In the case here for the Ottomans, they are running a +5 advisor for no apparent reason. I mean, they can afford it, but given they're only making 40 ducats, maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they should root out corruption instead. Oh, and of course, Thang over here has dev'd this province to 41 development because, of course, they have 37 dev clicks on this random Arctic highland. Good job. But okay, we've given every AI infinite monarch points. What if we give one AI specifically infinite monarch points and see them blob? Or at least hope to see them blob. And I've been previously critiqued for picking a meme nation like ARM for these kinds of experiments, right? And sure, giving infinite monarch points to ARM could be a nice meme or something. But let's see what an AI that actually expands and tends to do things in-game does with it. What happens if we throw balance out the window completely and give the Ottomans, and only the Ottomans, access to infinite monarch points? Will they use it to dev their land to the moon and stop expanding because they'll be out of GovCap? Or will they actually be able to utilize the tech lead and idea lead provided by those monarch points to, I guess, do a world conquest? I doubt it, but let's find out. So we're back in 1444, and if we go look at Britain, for example, again, just a random country, as we can see, no infinite monarch points coming in for Britain. If we check France, same story here, no infinite monarch points coming back in for them. And indeed, because we no longer have any infinite monarch points coming in for the Native Americans, including the Native Americans inside of Australia, I have, as you can see here, allowed them to migrate again, so that's a thing. With that said, tuning back into the Ottomans, as you can see here, they do have free mana, as the triggered modifier is now conditional. It is conditional on you being the Ottomans specifically. The Ottomans, rather nicely, also shouldn't form any other countries, so they should just keep having this modifier. So that's pretty neat. Anyway, we are now in Observer, so I guess let's watch the first 5 years together. What do they get up to? Unpausing, yep, they're immediately taking technology, makes sense, so they're going to be ahead compared to everyone else. Let's check, yep, beacon of technological progress. Although I would say they should probably take admin tech. And then they go, they've done it, and now they're bright green compared to everyone else. Perfect. Speed us up a little bit. I'm assuming they're going to be doing, honestly, normal Ottoman things. Yeah, as they now take tech 5 and everyone else is very red compared to them. Ouch. That is a very sad red now on 222 tech, or even 111 here in America. Yeah, not going to be a good time for them if the Americans ever get colonized by the Infinite Monarch Points Ottomans. With Admin 5, though, they've also finished administrative ideas, meaning they currently have 50% core creation cost. Saying that out loud just made me realize how insane this is, because the Ottomans opening with administrative ideas means, of course, they have 50% CCR right now. How do they have valid rivals? Also, it's 1446. You gentlemen should hurry up and declare some wars. In terms of their desires, yeah, pretty healthy desires. I'm guessing they are deving, though? Ah, and there we go, our first war with Byzantium. That checks out. If we tab into them, let us look at their GovCap. I'm assuming they're deving. Yeah, but they also have full administrative ideas and a lot of GovCaps, so their dev clicks, we can see them happen in real time. I say that and they immediately stop deving, but 346 dev clicks, and they're going to have no issues with the Byzantines here. Right then, I will say I do find it weird how there's a reluctance to take the next mill tech despite taking the next admin techs, but whatever. I guess they are still ahead, and it's their call how to spend their Infinite Monarch Points. And there we go, they took Tech 5. But yeah, with that CCR, taking all of the Byzantines will only set you back 100 admin. And I've just realized, that CCR doesn't matter. They have Infinite Monarch Points. The only thing that actually matters here is GovCap. And I guess administrative is good because they have more GovCap, but still. Well, there goes Constantinople, it's now the new capital, and they've gone straight into Albania. So indeed, the Venetians are at war with the Ottomans. I don't think they're quite winning that. But yep, as this war continues, the 1450s are approaching, at which point I will skip forward to the 1500s and see how well the Ottomans have done. So there's October. And we enter November now, which means we're just 2 months away. Last month's December. Yeah, I mean, Constantinople's under siege, to be fair. They're doing surprisingly bad. But yeah, 1450. We'll catch you in 50 years. And here we are, back in the 1500s. Let's take a look at the Ottomans here. They've certainly expanded very well, but honestly not as much as I thought they would. Bear in mind, the 1500s, or 1st of January 1500, is when you should finish Mehmed's ambition by, so I guess the AI is certainly not getting that achievement. But yeah, this Ottoman's looking pretty strong. 136 income, it has 108 units in the field with 157 force limit, 100k manpower. It's looking, I was going to say good on GovCap, it's not looking good on GovCap, it's using all of its GovCap to be fair, so that's probably why it's slowed down, and I guess that's a show of just how much expansion for EU4 countries is slowed down by GovCap, but they've taken all the land rights, as you can see there. They've got the Ottoman government reform for 150 more GovCap, and they've even got full admin ideas, and they've used the whole thing. Right, well, the next idea group is coming for them soon, which I think they probably end up embracing colonialism at this straight before they actually grab it, and for whatever reason, again, the AI just doesn't like grabbing mill techs ahead of time when they really should be. Technologically, they're very ahead, but they're only making 25 ducats out of Constantinople, which isn't a bad amount of money for an AI, but is an abysmal amount of money considering, again, they've had Infinite Monarch Points. It's still there. Honestly, I really don't think they're doing that well. It's a bit embarrassing, really. But I guess maybe they just need a little bit more time. And after all, they are expanding. They are working their way into the Mamluks. They're going into QQ here. They've entered Hungary a bit. But at the same time, I feel like I've seen better Ottomans. And I mean, they have been deving. If you look at this land, 19 dev clicks here in the Silk, and 19 dev clicks here, 25 dev clicks in Saruhan, and 25 in here in central Turkey. So they have been deving, very concentrated in a weird way. Also Persia formed. Checking timeline, I think that the Timurids have fallen apart, so yeah, a jam Persia. Huh. Pretty rare sight, especially for this early, I guess. But yeah, really not much more to say, and frankly a disappointing performance. Let's jump to 1550. And we're back. The Ottomans have indeed, in fairness, continued to expand. I will have to say this expansion into the Russian steppe is not one I expected, but at the same time, considering how many times I've seen the Ottoman AI invade the Russian steppe, I guess I should have expected it. In other news, at least the Ottoman AI is comfortably over GovCap, and I say that in the sense that, okay, they actually went over GovCap, that's good. They're not completely blocking themselves in by not going over GovCap, although that minus 21% admin efficiency is not a good friend for them. And the issue with the Ottomans specifically is them being over GovCap gives them more monthly decadence. Economy-wise, they're making 237 ducats a month, again a respectable income, but really not great when you start to comprehend that they've probably burnt through millions of extra monarch points and they should have not had access to. And indeed, looking at developer map mode, you can see that Turkey is a Italy equivalent paradise full of 30 development, and some are 15 dev in the yellows, but plenty of 38 dev, 37 devs, 26 dev pills. Very well developed Turkey. So the Ottomans have clearly been focusing their development on their Turkish provinces, fair enough. And again, 47 ducats in Constantinople isn't the worst, but I've seen a lot better. especially by 1550. I mean, hey, at least it is the highest value trade node in the game. Although I do have to say, Ottomans, why exploration? And I guess that makes me ask, did you actually get colonies? No, just some trade companies. They haven't explored yet to discover the New World, but they must be colonizing something. I'm really actually not sure what. What are you colonizing, Mr. Ottomans? They're colonizing Australia. Why? Why are we colonizing Australia, Ottomans? Okay, that is... I mean, that's dedication. They're going to Australia. That's a decision. They're defending Australia with 3 cavalry and 1 artillery, peak army composition moment, but nevertheless, I mean, they've grabbed some islands in Malacca. They have no trade power here or anything, so it's not like they're doing too much with them, but you know, they've got them, so that's the thing. And to be clear, I am kind of almost comparing them to a player level performance. For an AI, obviously this is incredible. 3,000 development, not that much actual conquest, ironically, if you look at the map, but most of this is just dev clicks. 3 times ahead of France and England, and they're also largest army, largest navy, and highest income, so hats off on that regard. It's just, I kind of almost expected more blobbing. In a weird way, their conquest into this land here is actually going to be really strong for them in the late game, because it's a lot of low dev provinces, which eventually they'll be able to dev very effectively. At the moment, though, again, their development focuses remain within Anatolia, but I think at this point they're so overextended and so over GovCap that yes, they're setting up islets, yes, they can mitigate a lot of the GovCap costs by just feeding the islets, but I just don't see them win or do a world conquest that, I'll be honest. They did do a war with Persia and just secured the Persian capital here, so as you can see they are starting to core it, but they're taking like 5 provinces of war here. I guess 50 more years, but I'm losing hope on any kind of world conquest here. It's just going to be a really, really strong Ottomans. And here we are in the 1600s. The Ottomans, as you clearly can tell, have decided to abandon the Middle East and move to greener pastures, or I guess more yellow pastures, as even the name has seemingly migrated to the Ottomans of the Russian steppe. Muscovy, of course, having been constantly invaded by the Ottomans, and Poland and Lithuania could never actually, you know, do anything. And to be clear, actually, no, just Lithuania. Poland did not take the PU, so Lithuania's been having a great game over here, expanding into Muscovy, as has Denmark. And hey, even Finland's here, independent, which is honestly a bit impressive. I'm not sure how that happened. Nevertheless, the Ottomans haven't exactly done too much in terms of expansion. They've conquered a bit more of Arabia, went a bit more into Ethiopia, but I think the GovCap has really held them back. As such, they've just kind of consolidated more of Russia and called it a day. To add into the Ottomans, they've now gone for quantity on their finishing 4th idea, which is even more terrifying. But unfortunately, being over-governing capacity has absolutely crippled the Ottomans, because as you can see, they went into all of their disasters. Like, literally all of them. Frankly, rather impressive. This means that despite having infinite monarch points, they cannot take tech, so they're behind on military technology, admin and diplomatic technology, because they've gone into all of their disasters, very impressive, caused by their insane decadence. And indeed, their decadence is now, despite the zenith of the Ottomans, sitting at 100. As you can see, decadence 100, which is absolutely crippling for them. Furthermore, in a way that I just don't know how the Ottomans have managed to achieve, they've entered bankruptcy. I genuinely feel like this was caused by the Ottomans having infinite monarch points and hence continuing to expand well beyond their governing capacity demands, and I guess continuing to dev. I can't believe it, but we've genuinely managed to get a state where the Ottomans have devved themselves into disaster. I guess the takeaway here is if you're the Ottomans, don't dev. Nevertheless, it's still a very impressive Ottomans. They are great power number 1, although it certainly doesn't seem that way. And in their bankrupt state, they can't afford their insanely massive armies. They're very overextended, well, not literally overextended, but well over GovCap. And they're making like none of the money they were making previously. Meaning that despite earlier being in a state where they would spawn global trade, they're no longer the highest value trade node in the game. A rather poetic end, but no, the Ottomans could not conquer the world anywhere close. So to answer the question of what happens if the AI has infinite monarch points, they somehow do worse. Or I guess more historically accurate, if you want to call this historically accurate. So hey, I guess the AI did surprise me. They surprised me by deving a lot more than I expected them to do, and in the case of the Ottomans here, somehow doing much worse than if they just didn't have all those monarch points and all of this early free expansion. But nevertheless, that is all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all my channel members, especially Ark, Solar, W Haste, Lemon, Star72, Lord Zendika, Nick Fastbanter, Manhattan, Nick Huss, The Awesome Rabbit, Best Pro Gaming, Grandma Flavia, Sov, Mobkiller, Anthony35, AC Napa, Glorious Leader, Frankie, Yukata, Danray, Private Claw, Jack, Marvy, Conspiracy Pizza, and Lebarude.